Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Hello, and welcome to today's story. My name is Jake Thompson. I'm 33 years old, and I fell in love with my wife, Emily, back in college. We got married right after graduation. We bought a house with a mortgage and a car on loan. Both of us work in office jobs at a big corporation, earning a steady salary and living a pretty routine life. At first, we were full of excitement about starting a life together. So even though we had loans for the house and car, we were happy to save money and manage our budget together. But as this lifestyle continued for 6 years, tensions and dissatisfaction started to build. Before we hit the 6-year mark of our marriage, everything just exploded. I started wondering, what if we hadn't gotten married right after graduation? Would I be living a more free, exciting life right now? "Hey, babe, what do you want for breakfast?" Emily asked, stretching as she sat up in bed. Back in the day, she'd be the one getting breakfast ready by now, and we'd follow our Saturday routine of watching a movie at the same time every weekend. Honestly, I was starting to feel bored with it all. "Honey, do we have to do the same thing every Saturday?" I asked cautiously, trying to gauge her feelings about our current routine. But she didn't seem to get what I was saying. "Are you saying you're not happy with how we're living?" she asked, a bit confused. "You want to change our lifestyle?" "Well, yeah, kinda." I realized from her tone that Emily could already sense my growing boredom. In truth, I was feeling frustrated with her. The excitement had worn off fast. I had been patient for a while after our honeymoon phase, but since then, I found myself counting the days as they dragged on. Emily was always calm, gentle, and soft-spoken even in bed. She was hesitant and lacked passion. Even though I had these feelings, I knew that if I expressed them, it would lead to a huge argument. Over the years, Emily's personality had shifted as well, and she'd become quicker to argue or give me the silent treatment over the smallest things. "Why aren't you saying anything?" she asked, her voice a little anxious. I held back for a long moment and finally said, "No, it's nothing." But it was clear that Emily had already seen through me. "I know what's going on," she said coldly. "For the last 6 years, we've worked the same jobs and followed the same routine. We don't have kids, and our lives aren't exactly exciting. So, yeah, I get that you're bored. But have you ever thought about the life we dreamed of when we started this? This is the life you promised me, Jake. I'm content with how things are right now, but I can't believe you're saying this to me." "Well, fine. Let's just get divorced then," she said suddenly, standing up from the bed. "I'll go stay with my parents this weekend." I was shocked and quickly grabbed her hand. No, you're misunderstanding me. That's not what I meant at all." "Then what did you mean?" she asked, pulling her hand away and sinking to the floor in tears. I was at a loss, watching her cry. Normally, I could comfort her, but this time it wasn't working. Thankfully, she didn't leave the house but instead retreated to another room, kicking off a silent standoff. That afternoon, we both stayed in separate rooms, not saying a word to each other. Out of boredom, I picked up my phone, opened WhatsApp, and considered reaching out to my friends for advice about our situation. But everyone seemed busy or attending some event. Feeling restless, I started scrolling through short videos when I stumbled across a group chat titled Family Swap. I had no idea what that meant, but it struck me as something strange and intriguing. According to the group's description, couples could agree to swap families whenever they wanted. Out of curiosity, I scanned the QR code and joined the group chat. Right away, I saw that everyone had left notes about themselves and their family situation. For example, someone wrote, "Mike Johnson, 33, one wife." There was also a group rule that if you didn't leave a note about your family situation, you could get kicked out. So, I followed along and changed my note to say, "Jake Thompson, 34, one wife." As soon as I updated my info, people started tagging me to welcome me. "Welcome to the group. How did you find us?" "Welcome. I see you've only got one wife at home, same here. Want to swap?" "Take your time. Get to know everyone first." I was a little confused but also curious about what might happen in this group. As I read through the messages, I was especially taken aback by the proposal from one guy suggesting we swap our wives. So, family swap really meant that? It hit me that this meant I could do all the things I normally did with my wife, but with someone else's wife instead. I should have felt repulsed by the idea, but weirdly, I was excited. Maybe it could make life a lot more interesting? Hey Mike, we're about the same age. Wanna add me as a friend? I tagged the guy who had suggested swapping. Since we were the same age and had similar family situations, I figured we might hit it off. Soon, Mike added me as a friend for a one-on-one chat. As soon as I accepted the request, he sent me a message. Hey, do you have a spare room at your place? My wife and I could come stay over for a while so we can bond. If that's uncomfortable, you're welcome to come stay at our place. We live in Queens. What? You live that close? I replied, surprised. I'm in Brooklyn, only 3 or 4 miles away. But my wife doesn't know I joined this group chat. I hesitated, unsure of how to explain it, but I eventually decided to come clean. After all, something like this only works if both sides are on board. I waited a bit after sending my message, and Mike replied almost immediately. No worries, my wife already knows. She's super open-minded, so she won't care. But we'll need a few days together to bond. After that, things will naturally happen. Based on what you've told me, I think spending a few days with us would be good for you. His response actually made sense to me. Nodding to myself, I sent him my home address and said they could come stay over. We agreed to tell my wife we were just friends from a hobby group. That evening, Mike and his wife knocked on our door. Excited, I rushed to open it, and there stood a man about my height and build, with a woman beside him in a short, revealing skirt. She was definitely attractive. Hey, you made it. Come on in. I saw they were carrying bags, so I reached out to help, but I was so nervous that I accidentally grabbed the woman's hand. Jake, who's at the door? I heard Emily's voice from behind me. The woman quickly pulled her hand away, pretending nothing had happened. I turned around to check Emily's face, but luckily, she was too far away to notice. I breathed a sigh of relief. Mike and his wife looked thrilled, like they were playing a fun game and enjoying it. Surprisingly, I didn't feel upset about it. Instead, that slightly twisted sense of excitement appealed to me. They're friends. They're visiting the city and needed a place to crash for a bit, I said with a smile, lying through my teeth. Emily and I had been arguing earlier, but hearing that we had guests seemed to help her snap out of it. All right, I'll go get the guest room ready for them, she said quietly, a bit reluctantly, but still polite. Thanks, babe. Emily didn't seem suspicious and didn't protest. I could tell Mike was interested in her. He seemed to like what he saw. After closing the door, I cut up some fruit and set it out on the coffee table. Emily and Mike went into the guest room and shut the door, getting things organized. I started feeling anxious. Was Mike planning to make a move? Would Emily go along with it? As much as I was nervous, I was also intrigued by what might happen next. As these thoughts raced through my mind, Mike's wife suddenly placed her hand on my leg and leaned in close. What are you thinking about? You look lost in thought. She gently took my arm and pressed herself against me. Don't I appeal to you? She teased. My heart started racing. It had been a long time since I'd felt this kind of attention from a woman. I hadn't been to a place like a nightclub or flirted with women since I started dating Emily, so having this attractive, flirtatious woman so close was overwhelming. Yeah, I do like you, I found myself saying almost unconsciously. She smiled and glanced over at the guest room. We shouldn't get caught, she whispered, reminding me that Mike and Emily were still sorting things out. Her words snapped me back to reality. I took a deep breath and got up to grab a glass of cold water. A few minutes later, Mike and Emily emerged from the guest room. I noticed Emily's face was flushed, and I could guess what had just happened, but I couldn't say anything. If I mentioned it, I knew Emily would be mortified. Did you get everything set up? I asked, acting casual. Yeah, almost done. What do you want for lunch? I'll make something, Emily said, avoiding eye contact as she headed toward the kitchen. Though she was clearly uncomfortable, she wasn't rejecting the situation outright. Thanks, Han, I said. Even though I was a bit disappointed, I didn't hold it against her. Everyone falls into temptation when they're stuck in the monotony of everyday life. I just wondered what had really gone on in that room. What had Mike said to make her blush like that? Did he seduce her with charm? What exactly had happened between them? There's not much in the fridge. Do you want to come with me to the store to pick up some groceries? Emily asked, looking around the kitchen. Whenever we needed to go shopping, we always went together. Even now, it seemed natural for us to do so. But as I was about to agree, Mike's wife lightly grabbed my hand, as if jealous, and held me back. Then Mike stepped into the kitchen and said, "I'll go with you. I'm not great at grocery shopping, so maybe you can teach me." Emily glanced at me and then nodded. "Babe, why don't you come with me?" Emily said as she passed Mike, her voice sounding a bit hesitant, standing right in front of me. She was asking me to go down to the store with her. Honestly, at that moment, I felt a surge of happiness. It was as if she was choosing me, and that made me feel good. But the more devoted she seemed, the more my betrayal weighed on me like a heavy guilt. As we headed out, she took my arm like she usually did when we went out together. After we'd walked around the supermarket for a bit, Emily quietly broke the silence. "Jake, I was wrong this morning. I shouldn't have said those things. I was just picking a fight for no reason." "No, babe, I was wrong too. I didn't control my emotions and I took it out on you." I apologized to her. In truth, I understood. Our life had gotten monotonous. "Maybe we should try for a baby," she said, looking at me with a hopeful smile. "I think having a baby would make our lives richer. And it's the right time for me to get pregnant. It'll be harder if we wait a few more years." At that moment, the guilt hit me hard, but I still didn't want to stop what I was doing. Despite Emily's sweet and calm nature, I couldn't resist the passionate appeal of Liz. Deep down, I knew someone like Emily was the kind of woman I needed in life, but I couldn't help but be drawn to someone like Liz. "Let's talk about it in a few days, okay? It's a bit awkward right now with our friends staying over," I said, patting her arm gently. Emily looked a bit disappointed, but seemed to realize something and asked, "By the way, your friend he's just visiting, right? How do you two know each other? And how long have you known him?" "Yeah, more like just visiting for a bit. He's an old middle school buddy. We haven't seen each other in a long time, so we decided to catch up. After this, I doubt we'll meet again. So, it's not like we're that close," I answered vaguely, trying to downplay my relationship with Mike. I added, "After this, I probably won't see him again." The reason I added that last part was to hint to Emily that she could feel free to enjoy her time with Mike. Since there wouldn't be any future meetings, why not make the most of the present? Emily nodded, as if she wanted to say something but held back. When we got back home, Emily and I slipped into our usual routine, busying ourselves together in the kitchen. Mike and Liz didn't join us. As I stood there with Emily, my mind kept drifting toward Liz. During dinner, the four of us had a strange conversation, and we realized that our two couples had a lot in common. We had both gotten married right after college, and neither couple had kids yet. Our mundane lifestyles had led to arguments and tension. However, Mike and Liz were more open-minded and adventurous. They openly admitted to having had affairs during their marriage, and they were honest about it with each other. On the other hand, Emily and I could never accept something like that, or at least, she couldn't. Right now, I was clearly accepting it, even if she wasn't. As Mike and Liz talked about their extramarital experiences, I couldn't help but become more intrigued. They described kissing strangers at bars, embracing each other in public places like subways. The stories stirred something in me, making me more eager to spend time with Liz. After dinner, when Liz offered to help me with the dishes, I didn't refuse. As soon as she stepped into the kitchen, I locked the door and kissed her passionately. Finally, we had the space to act on our emotions without worrying about being seen. But despite the thrill, I still felt a sense of unease. I worried Emily might become suspicious. If she walks in on us, it'll all be over, I thought to myself. Sensing my anxiety, Liz whispered, "Are you worried about Emily and Mike?" "Yeah, if we get caught," I replied. "Don't worry," she said calmly. "I decided to go through with this because I know it won't affect my marriage." When we were eating earlier, Mike told me that he'd already tested the waters with Emily in the bedroom. The fact that we've been gone this long without Emily saying anything means he's already succeeded. If we go out now, we'd just be interrupting them. Does that make sense? Hearing Liz's explanation, I suddenly remembered the conversation I'd had with Emily at the supermarket. She didn't talk about what Mike had done. Instead, she asked about my relationship with him. Emily had been testing the waters too, evaluating the situation to see if it was okay for her to try something with Mike. It all made sense now. Finally, I relaxed a little and looked at Liz again. Her beauty reassured me, and I checked that our clothes were still tidy. Then, I quietly went back to doing the dishes. But when I looked out into the living room, Emily and Mike weren't there. I wondered where they had gone. Just as I started to get concerned, they came out of one of the smaller rooms. As soon as I saw them, I quickly finished up the dishes and pretended like nothing was out of the ordinary. But when I made eye contact with Emily, I didn't feel the tension I'd expected. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was like she knew what was going on. "Hey, babe," I called to her, testing the waters. She smiled, looking a little embarrassed. "You know, I'm not totally against something like this. I just wish you had been upfront with me and asked my opinion," she said softly, confirming my suspicions. When I realized that Emily had actually accepted this whole situation, I was shocked. Without thinking, I reached out to take her hand to gauge her reaction. But instead of looking at me, she smiled and glanced at Liz. "Tonight, you two can sleep in the master bedroom, and we'll take the small room," she said. With that, I knew for sure Emily had truly accepted everything. "Honey, why don't we go out and catch a movie?" Mike said casually, taking Emily's hand. She blushed but nodded, and the two of them left the house like it was no big deal. My mind was racing with mixed emotions, but one thing was certain: I no longer had to hide anything. Emily knew what was happening, and she was okay with it. Liz came up behind me, wrapping her arms around me. "Since they've gone out to watch a movie, why don't we get cleaned up and head to bed?" she whispered. Filled with excitement, I took her hand and led her to the master bedroom. I'd been so eager to be with Liz, and I enjoyed it at first. But afterward, my excitement faded faster than I expected. Instead, I found myself obsessing over the thought of Emily being with Mike. It hurt me. Why had I ever let this happen? Why did I allow Emily to be with Mike? I suddenly remembered how I used to tell everyone back in college how much I loved Emily. But now, that passion didn't feel the same. Maybe I was never someone who could sustain lasting love and devotion. With those thoughts running through my mind, I eventually fell asleep. I tossed and turned all night and didn't wake up until the morning light was already shining through the window. When I woke up, I put my clothes on and made a decision: I had to talk to Emily. Let's stop this whole swapping thing. I can't take it anymore. I can't let anyone else have what's mine. I walked into the kitchen, where Emily was making breakfast, and I gently took her hand. "Babe, I was wrong," I said. "I never should have agreed to this ridiculous swap. I can't handle you getting close to Mike. Please, let's cut ties with them. I can't stand this anymore." Emily looked at me with a calm expression and replied, "You already got what you wanted with Liz, so your desire is satisfied. But now that I'm out of your control, your insecurity has come back, and you want to end this and pull me back to you. Do you realize how disgusting you are, Jake?" I was shocked, but I knew she was right. Every word she said was true. She continued, "You know, I regret not seeing you for who you really are sooner. On the outside, you seem calm and stable, but deep down, you're selfish, driven by your ego, and hungry for something new and exciting. You've got a need for control, and you're a hypocrite. I can't believe I've spent 6 years married to someone like you." Fear gripped me. "Please, give me another chance. I'll change. Please, babe." But Emily pulled her hand away and didn't say anything more. No matter how much I begged, she didn't look back at me. In my despair, I thought, is this really the only way I can keep her in my life? By continuing with this messed up swap? After breakfast, Emily printed out divorce papers and handed them to me. "Let's get divorced," she said firmly. "I won't agree to a divorce," I said, just as firmly. "Fine," she replied. "Then we'll separate. I can't live with you anymore." And just like that, she walked out of the house, taking nothing with her. In that moment, I finally understood. Emily didn't care about Mike, and she didn't care about the excitement of it all. What had kept her with me for so long was the fact that she valued our relationship. But now, she had let it go. She didn't need anything anymore, not even me. I had lost everything. Without Emily, I was nothing. That's all for today's story. If you'd like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I'll keep making great content. Thank you for watching.